Okay, today I'm going to talk about why you should unplug from electronics more often and kind of the epidemic of electronics overusage in our culture. So, think about how you get ready for bed, you take a shower, you do everything, you're going to lay down in bed, you're going to relax, you're going to browse your little news feed, or you're going to watch a Netflix movie or something like that, and then all of a sudden your friend posts on Facebook, and oh my goodness, it's very important for you to read it, so you do. And then 2 hours later you look up and you go, oh my goodness, I just wasted 2 hours of my life. And that's kind of the point here. We waste a lot of time in our life doing some of these things. I have 5 kids, and one of the things that got me interested in this is I noticed if they spent a lot of time on the Wii or playing computer games, they would have a super bad attitude, and I was going, this doesn't make any sense. But then when I started thinking about them, I started thinking about me and realized I did exactly the same thing. So I started researching it and found out some very interesting stuff. So today we're going to talk about the negative effects of electronics or electronics overusage, what things we can do instead of using the electronics, and some of the myths that kind of people throw back at you when you say, oh, I'm not going to have Facebook, or I'm not going to spend time doing this. So some of the effects, some of the negative effects of electronics overusage, they fall into 2 real categories, and then you can create subcategories, but I had a bunch of subcategories and it took way too long. So according to healthline.com, kids are using electronics excessively, and to the point where your average child in the United States spends 7.5 hours in front of a screen a day, which is leading to increased incidence of obesity, some other mental issues we'll discuss in a minute. And the shocking thing was, when I was researching, I was like, okay, well that makes sense. So then I started looking at it for adults. The average adult in the United States spends 11.5 hours behind the screen a day. The average adult. And there are all kinds of metabolic disorders, diabetes, neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to learn and create new pathways. All of these things are negatively affected by electronics usage. So that's the physical aspect. The mental aspect is very interesting. So there are several studies. ABC News had a link to one. They kind of all mirror one another. It's very interesting, and they're all very controlled, and they're done a different way, but they come to the same exact conclusion that our use of electronics and social media, while they were supposed to bring us together and make us more kumbaya-ish, and we're just all a happy family, we actually became more isolated. And when we became more isolated, we started experiencing things like depression, other mood disorders, bipolar disorder, and this is across the board. Kids, adults, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter who did it or how the study was done. Very similar to Nicholas's, when you're talking about just a very short period of time, and you had the negative effects. So we talked about some of the negative effects. Let's talk about some of the things that you can do. So several things, obviously. There are a lot of alternatives to electronics which aren't just smashing them, which is what I like to do. You could just read books when you get ready for bed. There are studies that show, actually, MarketWatch had a study that showed that if you actually read a book before you went to bed, you fell asleep an hour and a half faster than if you were on your phone when you got in bed. You can play board games instead of the apps and the games on your phone. Very simple. And one of the other things that board games do, along with a couple other things, is most of them you have to do with somebody else. You can't do them alone. So they decrease that isolated problem. You can go camping, you can go hiking, organized sports, things you can do outside of your house. They're very good for your body, because another aspect is exercise actually decreases your rate of depression as well. One thing that I do is have actually electronics-free time. So when it gets to 9 o'clock, if it's past 9 o'clock, unless I'm doing an assignment for school, they all go away, including my work phone, everything. And people will say, I tried to call you at 9:30. Well, sorry, it was turned off. And then I obviously turn back on in the morning. But I've also heard of other people just having zones, like don't bring your tablet in the bed, or don't bring it into the bedroom, things like that. So now we've talked about things you can do. Let's talk about some of the myths. You don't have time to read. Well, you're already spending at least 2 hours just wasting your time on Facebook or whatever. If you just cut that out, you got plenty of time to read. Outdoor activities are expensive. No, they're not really expensive. Most of them are actually free, and the ones that aren't free are very cheap. So being on a little intramural sports team or going hiking, I mean, you can go hiking for free. You don't even have to spend money to do it. If you are not so important that if you miss a post on Facebook, you are not going to die, I assure you. So this excuse that I might not know what's going on in the world is really just an excuse. You can see it tomorrow. It'll be okay, I assure you. So we've talked about some of the myths. Today we really just talked about the negative effects of electronics usage, the things that you can do to unplug, and help you understand kind of how that affects your life. And thank you very much.